Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Stagger Stands podcast. I am your host, Alex, and I am back in my usual spot. Last time I was on my bed, and now I am in my normal spot, and you can kind of see what I've done with my room. The biggest thing, and what people listening to my podcast would really care about, is that I have an actual place to hang my medals and to hang my awards, or not to hang my awards, but just I have a shelf to put them on there, and it's really fun. I made it with my dad. We customized it. We essentially made it from scratch. We just grabbed little pieces, and I went to a carpinteria here in town and just asked for a piece of wood, and then I sanded it, sealed it, and good to go. And then we drilled it into the wall. So that was really fun, and you can just see other spots, other parts of my room and how they've changed. Honestly, I don't think anyone cares, but I do care, and so I want to talk about it because honestly I love how my room turned out. So this episode was the one that I wanted to film last week, but I was kept on postponing it because I felt like I didn't have enough things to talk about, and I was thinking to myself oh, it's not going to be long enough, the episode isn't going to be long enough, and I'm wait, my first few episodes were 12-15 minutes long, and here I am worried that it may not reach 30 minutes. Come on, Alex, really? So I'm just going to talk about my experience in Italy and how I came back and what I learned during the trip, or just how I experienced the trip. I want to talk about a few fun stories, and then I also want to talk about coming back and how I continued my life after it, because I even talked about it a few episodes before I actually went on this trip. I always said, I love traveling because I always feel I come back with some sort of revelation, and while this time I didn't really come back with a specific revelation, I just came back with a newfound motivation and kind of figured out how I work because it's always good to find out how I work when it comes to motivation and discipline, specifically with training and paddling and all that stuff. I definitely found a lot more motivation for it. Okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to talk about the trip and the places that I went to and what we did. So I went to Italy from April 27th to May 8th. It was around 8 or 9 days, I think. And I went with my mom, and it was bringing this trip up, or just the first time that it was mentioned, it was back in January. We were on a call and we were talking, or we were just complaining about things that were happening. Not necessarily complaining, but we're just we need a break from this. And I offhandedly, fully joking, by the way, I said, I don't know if my mom knew that, it was fully joking. I said, oh, we should just go to Rome, because after I traveled a little bit at the end of 2023, that was just my response to anything, oh, let's just travel, or oh, let's just go to Rome, let's just go to Paris, stuff like that, just for funsies. And my mom was like, yeah, let's go, let's go. And so we essentially figured out a time that would work with both of our schedules, and we ended up going. I flew up there, I met up with my mom in Atlanta, and then we flew over to Rome. And our plan was to go to 3 different places. We planned to spend majority of the time in Rome, and then to Siena, and then Portofino. But some things happened, so we weren't able to go to the last location, but I'll talk about that later. Before I get into depth of each trip, I just want to let you know that I made a YouTube video. About my experience. It was I used my GoPro and I just filmed everything that we did, and it's on my YouTube channel, not this YouTube channel, but a different one, my personal one. I'll link it in the show notes of this podcast so that if you want to go see it, you can see it. I really like it. It's very simple, very calm, but it's so fun, and you just, I don't know, you get to enjoy it with us. So we spent 5 days in Rome, a little less than 24 hours in Siena, and then we were planning on spending at least 2 days in Portofino, but there were train strikes during that day, and we were unaware of the fact that there were train strikes when we booked the train tickets and when we kind of scheduled our trip. So we ended up we weren't going to be able to make it to Portofino in time for it to even make sense or be worth the amount of energy and time we were spending trying to get there. And so we ended up we decided to cut our losses, and we were just trying to figure out what to do next. We were at the Siena train station, because as we were arriving was when we realized that there were train strikes. So we didn't really know what to do. And also another thing, that we found out is that when there are train strikes, it usually isn't towards a specific area. Like the union that is striking, usually everyone in that union, in either in the entire region or the entire country, is striking at the same time. So even if we were to somehow get to another place or even make it to our connection to get to another train, because we had two connections. We had two transfers leading to Portofino. Even if we made it to our first one, we would have made it on the second one, and the third one was canceled too. So 2 of our trains were canceled to our location, and they also said that you probably weren't going to be able to get a train to Rome or even Florence, because that day they were also striking in those areas too. Like, it was a high risk of it being canceled. So we were sitting at the Siena train station, and this couple walked up to us and were like, "Hey, do you guys want to share a taxi to Florence?" And we were like, "Okay, let's do that. Let's get in a taxi and let's go to Florence." It was an hour away. So we hopped on Florence, and we were like, you know what, it's better to be in Florence than in Siena right now, because with Florence it's a lot easier to get to Rome, which was where we were planning on flying out. And so once we reached Florence, we put our bags in like a storage area. We just like walked around, and I essentially scheduled ourselves for that night to get to Rome, which, side tangent, is going to be a little side tangent. I know I'm already getting off track, but I'm going to get even more off track right now. Last year in October, I did a month-long trip to Europe. I toured England, France, Switzerland, and Italy. So I had already been to like Rome and Florence and all that stuff, but I hadn't been to Siena. But anyways, I learned a lot of skills on that trip, especially just traveling through a foreign country and just Europe in general. And then I kind of proved to myself and the other people around me when I went alone to Spain and I did Barcelona and Madrid on my own. I really proved to also, like, majority myself, like my parents kind of already knew, like they trusted me with it, that's why they let me go to Spain alone. But I kind of proved to myself that I could travel alone and I could figure out my logistics and just do everything. And so when this trip came along, I was in charge of all the logistics. My mom was just like, there you go, your responsibility, you have to do that. And so I was in charge of like booking the trains. I booked up the trains, and I booked the first tour that we had, and I immediately messed up. So I did tell my mom to like have her book them, because I did mess up on the first time, but hey, I ended up actually working out a lot better than had I chosen a different way. But anyways, so side tangent kind of over, back to the whole situation with the train strikes. We were in Florence for around like 10 hours during the day, and we planned on taking a night bus to Rome. We still did not want to risk booking a train, because during that time it was still considered a day where there were strikes happening, so we decided to take a bus. I was responsible for getting us to the bus stop and then booking the bus from Florence to Rome, and they dropped us off at the Rome bus terminal, and so they dropped us off at 3 a.m., which we did that on purpose. We then got a taxi from the Rome bus terminal to the Rome train terminal, waited there for a few hours, and then got on our train from the Rome train terminal to the airport terminal, and then from there we just went to our gate. So I was in charge of that whole night, and my mom, she was so, I like would try to explain it to her what I was doing and how I was doing it, and she had to like keep on asking me like, okay, wait, how does this work? Can you just like explain it to me one more time? I'm like, come on, mom, seriously. Ended up working out, and we ended up getting to the airport completely fine and completely safe, and it was fun. It was nice. I'm very proud of myself that I was able to handle that situation really well, and we were able to solve an issue that we were experiencing. And honestly, I'm really happy that I did get back earlier than I thought I would, because as much as I love traveling and everything, being home is just something special. Sayulita is just something so special. It feels good to have your normal structure, you know? But anyways, I'm going to go into depth on what we did in each place. Not into depth, but I'm just going to show, or like not show, I'm going to talk about the best parts, if that makes sense, my favorite parts. In Rome, it was very fun, but not very relaxing. I've learned that I don't like cities. I get so overwhelmed in cities, and by the end of the day, each day, I just wanted to like curl up into a little ball and not talk to anyone. When we would have dinner, my mom would always say, "Oh, you're so quiet, like what's happening?" And I would be very like short with her. Because I just did not want to talk. I just needed to unwind. Some fun things that we did was that we woke up at 5 a.m. We woke up at 5:30 a.m. to go to the Trevi Fountain and the Spanish Steps. We went there that early, so no one else was there. So we got really fun photos without having to be like shoulder to shoulder with people. We also went to like some garden. I wish I knew the name at the moment, but we went to some gardens that were like higher up on a little hill, and so we got to watch the sunset. It was a little cloudy, but you could still see a little bit of the color, and there was also someone playing like violin, so I think it was a violin, so it was so peaceful and it was so nice. I loved it so much. And I was actually a little bit later, I saw a video of that location, and it was so crowded with people. It was crazy, but the sunset was beautiful, so I'm kind of assuming that the reason why there weren't that many people that day was because it was so cloudy. So I'm very happy that we went there when it was cloudy. Another thing is that I got to revisit my hostel, because I did stay in Rome in October, and I got to revisit the location of my hostel, and I also got to see all the other fun places that we would go to on a regular basis when we were there. Another thing was that we went on a ghost tour. We went on a night tour, and we got to learn a ton of fun old stories about Rome and about situations or just like locations and people. Did you guys know that the most infamous female serial killer in the world killed over 600 people? That is impressive. That was really fun. And then we also went to a castle, which is right next to Vatican City, and that was essentially where they would take the Pope when he needed to flee the Vatican. That was where they would take him to just protect him. And there was a spot in the castle where you could literally see the entirety of Rome. You could see the Colosseum, you could see everything. But an even better view was when we went to the top of the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City. And when I tell you to get up there, the hallway was so skinny and the stairs were so crooked. Once we kept on getting closer and closer or higher, it's a dome, right? So it's curved. So the hallway was curved. You had to like kind of tilt your head off to the side to continue walking, but the view was so worth it. It was so beautiful. A lot of the things that were my favorite were things that I didn't get to do my first time around in Rome, so switching things up was also really nice. And now Siena, I fell in love with Siena, guys. I absolutely love Siena. Out of all the places that I have visited in the past several months, I feel like Siena was the only city that I've been in where I actually could see myself living there. And we didn't even get to see the vineyards, and I feel like if I had seen the vineyards, I would have fallen even more in love. And Siena was just so calm in comparison to Rome. You could actually sit in the center plaza. We could just walk around without having to butt shoulders or just having to flow with traffic. You didn't have to run, essentially. And we just so happened to be there on a really, really big holiday. It was the Fiesta de Santa Catalina di Siena. We got to see, like, the president of Siena do a speech and everything. And we also got to see all of the coat of arms. So essentially in the region of Siena in the Middle Ages, there used to be 17 coat of arms, and they just would all provide certain things to the military, because that was also when Siena had a really big conflict with Florence. They were butting heads. And so now, obviously, they don't necessarily need that military help anymore, but the coat of arms are still very celebrated in Siena. And it was so fun to learn about the different coat of arms. And it was something that I just kept on noticing, and I just fell absolutely in love with. I fell in love with the wave coat of arms. There's a wave coat of arms, and that one was my favorite one. I could go on and on about the coat of arms, but we're going to continue with Florence. I was so happy being in Siena. It was so chill and relaxed. So when I was thrown right back into a really big city, I was not having it. I didn't really like it. It was just so busy. It was crazy busy. The monuments were beautiful as always. I love the Duomo, or like not the Duomo, the cathedral, but we also didn't really feel like doing anything. We were in Florence because we were trying to kill time, so we ended up not doing much. Okay, so that was each little place, talking about each little place. Now I want to talk about what I came back with. Like I said before, I always come back with something that I learned or experienced, or just something, a revelation, when I come back from a trip. And like I said before, again, I didn't really necessarily come back with a revelation. I just came back with a stronger motivation. It also kind of was a reset, but I'll get into that in a sec. A big thing is that I want to learn Italian. I keep on, every time I come back from a country where I don't know the language, I just have this urge to learn the language. I was so frustrated in Italy when I couldn't speak the language, because I'm bilingual. I speak English and Spanish, so I am very used to switching languages to fit my circumstance. So if someone doesn't speak English, I'll switch to Spanish. If someone doesn't speak Spanish, I'll switch to English. I'm very used to being able to switch languages to fit the circumstances that I'm in. So when I couldn't switch, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And I can understand Italian, I can read Italian, I just can't speak it. So that's definitely a big thing that I want to do. And then, like I said, I came back with a full reset. I fortunately had the privilege of being able to essentially pause my life for a little more than a week. And so I was able to look at my circumstances and what I was doing with my day-to-day life as almost like an outside perspective, just like kind of seeing it for what it was and not actively being a part of it. And I realized that I was definitely putting myself in a really bad cycle when it came to paddling, especially in the morning, or just training in general. A lot of times I would be like, okay, tomorrow morning I'm gonna go paddle, and then I'd wake up and be like, oh, I don't want to go paddle, I'm not going to go paddle, and I ended up not paddling. And essentially that just causes yourself to lose a lot of faith in yourself. And it's so much easier to just be like, oh, I didn't do it last time and nothing bad happened, so I'll just not go this time. And you become unreliable towards yourself. It's just a really bad cycle, and I was in it. With this trip, it kind of felt like a reset. I just realized, like, I'm not gonna let that happen again, and I'm going to commit to my commitments and not let myself be able to get out of it, because I really need to train. That's kind of a big part of what I do. So for now, even if I don't do that much in my training session, I'm going in with the attitude of it's the act of going that counts, because even if you don't do like a really big training session, you are going out there and you are creating the habit of going out. For me, that's really what I need right now, and I've also been doing a lot of zone 2 training, which is nice, just to build a good base. And it is good because it also, I know that I'm not going to kill myself in the training session, and I can just prioritize my technique and breathing, and that's what I like. I don't want to come back every single time just exhausted. That's the big thing that I came back with. What I thought I was going to come back with was I thought I was going to come back with more inspiration when it comes to redoing my room. About a week or even a few days before I went to Italy, I had this sudden urge to redo my room. I realized that my room was no longer serving me anymore, so I wanted to change it, but I also know that I very commonly have just these hyper urges to just do something, and I have to do it right then and there, and a lot of times it just isn't necessary. So it was really nice to just take those few days when I went on the trip to just sit with my thoughts and think about it, like whether or not I do want to do this. It was going to take a lot of money, it was going to take a lot of time to actually redo my room. And so I was also searching Rome and just these places we were going to for inspiration, and I didn't find it. In fact, I completely forgot that I was thinking about redoing my room. But anyways, I did end up redoing my room. I came back and I'm like, yeah, no, I need to switch things up. Things need to change. But I was really hoping that I would come back with more ideas as to how to switch up my room. But I feel like the ideas that I originally came up with and continued through ended up working out. So it was great. That's it for this episode. It was a very chill episode, very quick one, but I just wanted to talk about my experience, and I love traveling so much. It's so fun. You learn so much. You create so many awesome memories. You develop great skills. So I just want to talk about it. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode, and I will catch you next week with a paddle themed episode. Okay, bye-bye.